now we got to talk about the Montreal Canadiens moving forward.
Yeah.
But before we talk about them moving forward, let's have a quick conversation about this season and this playoff run specifically. And how do you think the 2021 Montreal Canadiens are going to be remembered? Because it was a very weird season, Lepore. Like, and I talked about this on our last podcast. I'm just going to bring up these numbers real quick. So you look at the win-loss record in the regular season and playoffs combined this year and goal differential. Okay, so the Lightning 52-27 this year. So they won 52 out of 79 games and had a plus 64 goal differential, while the Montreal Canadiens were 37-41. So they won just 37 of 78 games this year and had a minus 12 goal differential. So just taking all that into consideration, Lepore, how should we look back at this season for the Habs and this playoff run where they actually got to the Stanley Cup final?
Ooh, this is a good one, Bruno. I'm going to kind of, people are going to be mad at me for this one because I'm going to kind of take a curve on this one. I think we're going to look back at this season for the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, we're going to look at it fondly because they made a Stanley Cup final. They went through a Canadian division, so they got to spit at other Canadian teams along the way. They'll get to laugh at Leafs fans for a long time or until they face each other again in the playoffs or until Toronto can beat them in a playoff series. So who knows about that one. But I think, and I feel like I'm copping out here, but I think this run for Montreal will be remembered based on how next year goes for them. Because if this team has a strong year next year, if these kids continue to develop and say Montreal comfortably makes the playoffs next year, people will look back and say, yeah, like we saw like the start of this last year in the playoffs. This team was a good team towards the end of the year, meaning the playoffs, and it continued into this regular season, and we'll see what happens in next year's playoffs. But, and this may be unfair, but if this team gets off to a bad start, or if this team misses the playoffs next year, it will affect how people look back on it because it's hockey. To go far, whether you're a good team or I'm not going to say a bad team, because I don't think any bad teams make the playoffs, but a lot has to go your way. And people call it luck. It's not luck. Like luck is sort of like a negative word. It's just like the sport. You can get outplayed, you can still win. You can get dominated, you can still win. So things happened in Montreal's favor for them to go on this run that were unlikely. Like I'll put it that way. A lot of things happened in their control and outside their control that helped them go on this run. So it's easy for people to point to it and say they fully deserve credit. And it's easy for people to point to it and say they don't deserve any credit at all. This is just a complete fluke. But I think on the grand scope of things, we will get a full assessment of this, or I shouldn't say a full assessment of it. Sort of like the mainstream take of it will be developed next year based on how they do in the regular season, if they make the playoffs, and how they do in the playoffs. I mean, it's kind of like the similar one I have in my head is Ottawa in 2017, how that team was one goal away from the Stanley Cup final. And then it's funny because everyone pointed, like the advanced stats guys were pointing to that team and calling it bullshit, saying the team has no business beating this team. They're getting all the breaks, all the bounces, all the luck. And Sens fans were quick to say, like, what are you talking about? This team's great. Well, they plummeted in the standings the next year. Like I remember like the Hockey News had them in the preseason rankings missing the playoffs. It's like, how do you put a team that's one goal away from the Stanley Cup final missing the playoffs? Well, everything went their way. And before you know it, Pierre Dorion was on the stage saying, we're going to rebuild this team and gut it. So it's similar to that. But again, that assessment was made of the Sens the following season. So people kind of look back at that now like, how'd that happen? Or at least some people do. So I think that's kind of what's going to happen in Montreal. So it's up to the organization, I guess, on it's going to be result based on how they look at it. So,
yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it, Lepore. And the way that I assess the situation, you had, quite frankly, just a not very good team
Yeah, you're a lot more harsh than I am, I think,
Like,
on the
let's not
topic of the Montreal
sugarcoat it.
Canadiens.
This team finished 4 games under 500 this year, just looking at straight win-loss record, a -12 goal differential. You're lying to yourself if you think this Montreal Canadiens team was really good. And listen, full credit to them for making it to the Stanley Cup final. We've seen this before. We've talked about this countless times on the last 2 or 3 shows. You have the 03 Anaheim Ducks, the 04 Flames, the 06 Oilers. Then you had the Kings in 2012 who won the cup as an 8 seed. But as me and Lepore have talked about, that count. Kings team was not a real 8 seed. That was a very, very good Kings team. But, this Habs team, they got hot at the perfect time. Carey Price went from a .901 save percentage in the regular season to, stopping the puck at over a 93% rate in the playoffs up until the Stanley Cup final, of course. You had the emergence of Cole Caulfield, which was awesome to see because I think
that was exciting for Montreal. Again, round of applause for the kids. Like, that really was exciting as a neutral.
Like Caulfield and Suzuki, man, those guys.
Suzuki's a player, man.
They were so impressive. And it's not even just like, the highlight reel goals that you're seeing, both of these guys score. To me, it's their ability to generate offense. And I talk about this so many times. Like, you need guys that can make plays. And especially when it gets tight and you're in, a 1-goal game in the playoffs and you need somebody to make something happen when there's not a lot of room out there. And Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki, those were the guys that were doing that for the Montreal Canadiens. And listen, I know Josh Anderson had a couple real nice games, the 2-goal game in Game 4 of the Cup final, and he had that 2-goal game in the Vegas series, but he was a ghost most of the playoffs.
It's kind of his thing, eh? It's like he had some games, like the best player out there. Oh my God, this guy's incredible. And then it's like, did Josh Anderson play? Look at another game. It's weird.
It's really weird because you watch him sometimes and you're like, oh my God, this guy's like 6'2", 6'3", skates like the wind, like amazing power forward, and then just disappears for like 6 games. Yeah. Whereas like Nick Suzuki, game in and game out, I thought he was great. And Cole Caulfield wasn't as good in the Cup final. Like, he was awesome in the Vegas series. In the Cup final, he wasn't very good. But I mean, can we give this guy a break? I mean, he's a rookie. He has now I don't even know how many games of NHL experience does he have now? Like, he hasn't even hit like 30 games of NHL experience. Yeah. Something in that range. But anyway, so those are positive things to look at moving forward. But, then you look at this D core. It's an aging defense core. I like Jeff Petrie. I still like Shea Weber, but Ben Sherrod and Joel Edmondson. I mean, come on here. I mean, this team just, they need to upgrade at pretty much every position. Like,
Romanov's good. I think Romanov could be good.
Yeah, and Romanov's a good player too, but like, it was also weird how like they just didn't play Romanov.
Yeah, like, what's Montreal's problem, man? With these kids, even Kotkaniemi near the end too. Like what's just going
bizarre.
on?
And even going back, Lepore, even going back to the first round series against the Leafs, how Caulfield was a healthy scratch in the first 2 games.
Wasn't it Kotkaniemi and Caulfield?
Yeah,
that was
Kotkaniemi was a healthy scratch in game 1. And then I think he returned for game 2, but they waited like an extra game to play Caulfield. Yeah. It's like, what the hell are they doing?
Yeah.
Like, those guys, like those young guys were their best players. And maybe not Romanov, but even Romanov, like, you watch him, but he scored a goal in the Cup final. Sure. He's smooth. He can be physical. Like, and I get it. They don't have the experience. Let's play the experienced guys, the guys that I trust. But it's like,
in that voice,
it got to a point where they're just like galaxy braining it. Even with Thomas Tatar, he's been like one of their leading scorers the last couple of seasons. And I know he was dealing with an injury at some point, but then they just decided to just not play him. Like, at all. Like, I don't know. There were some weird decisions that were being made with that Montreal management team and coaching staff. But yeah, I mean, I look at this Habs team and what they did this year, and you cannot look at this being another team in the National Hockey League and say, we're going to replicate that. Like, I think that's when you're going to get into trouble here is looking at this Habs team and being like, oh, we can do that next year. Well, yeah, you can do that next year if 12 different things go your way, but you just can't have this many holes throughout your lineup, have that much of a talent discrepancy from series to series, and expect to actually win a Stanley Cup. And again, they made the Cup final. The Leafs haven't won a playoff series since 2004, okay? This team made it to the friggin' Stanley Cup final, which is incredible.
To that point, Bruno, since this came out the other day, of course it came out the other day. Well, two things came out. I think the Leafs are now the longest ever drought. They passed the Rangers drought.
Yeah, by
And now,
days, just
days. It was like
days,
whatever,
yeah.
1,000 days. And now that Montreal has made a Stanley Cup final since the last time the Toronto Maple Leafs won a playoff series, minus the new young Winnipeg Jets, every Canadian team has in fact made the Stanley Cup final.
That is so sad.
Gluttons for punishment.
Like that literally makes me want to go cry.
Punch right in the balls right there to go on the show.
Oh my God, that's brutal. But yeah, like going back to this Habs team, like I said, kudos to them. Full credit for getting this far. But that team was never talented enough to win the Stanley Cup. And I've talked about even, the New York Islanders. It's like as well as they play defensively and as well as they commit to their system, does that team have the talent to win a Stanley Cup? And now we've seen 2 years in a row where they've lost in the conference final. So yeah, this Habs team, they have some major work to do, I think, because you look at the Atlantic Division next season and everyone's talking about this. You got Boston, Tampa, Florida, the Leafs. I mean, Ottawa, I still don't think is there.
Ottawa's going to be better.
But they're getting better, right? So, like, Lepore, do you think this, I mean, I don't want to just throw this on you out of nowhere, but if you had to pick right now, like, are the Habs, or do you think the Habs are going to make the playoffs next season?
It's hard for me to put them in the top 3 in the divisions. Then I'd say no. Like if I'm betting, I would say no because I wouldn't put them in the top 3 in the division, and then they're in the wild card race with the other division. And so who knows, like what happens there, like Florida, Tampa Bay, Boston, Toronto. Well, I'll put it that way. Would you put them ahead of those 4?
I wouldn't. Like
so right there, you have one more playoff spot because you have the 3 and then you have the one that drops to the wild card.
Yeah. Like I think the Habs next year, like they'll probably be fighting for a wild card spot. I really think that's their upside.
That's fair.
Things could change. Like if they go out and they acquire like Jack Eichel or make some like massive splash like that and actually bring in like a legit number 1 center, top line forward star in the league, that'll change my mind a little bit. But as currently constructed, we're heading into next season. And I know that some of these other teams in the Atlantic Division have moves to make and their rosters are going to look a little bit different as well, especially the Tampa Bay Lightning. But yeah, it's just hard to look at this Habs team as a top 3 team in the Atlantic Division. I think it's going to be an uphill battle for them next year. And listen, it might even be an uphill battle for the Leafs as well. Like, I don't think the Leafs are a stone lock to finish like top 2 or 3 in the division. So it's going to be a hell of a division for every team involved. And I can't wait for it.
Yeah.